Cordial greeting tutoring partners. My name is Camila Arana Carvajal and welcome to presentation about step 1 to look into for designing teaching materials of the courses materials design face-to-face environments. When we want to talk about materials development or materials that as a teacher we can use in a teaching of a foreign language, we have to talk about language teaching and language learning. The first language teaching is a word to reveal the materials used for the teachers to give learning to the students, and it could include textbooks uses for the teacher in front of the students explaining conventions of direct speech in English. And other example is using guiding learners to make the students get discoveries. Other example is when the teacher providing vocabulary to learners' needs will is participating in a challenging text. This can be direct, that is when the teacher transmits information, indirect, when the teacher helps learners to discover things for themselves, preemptive, that is when the teachers promoting their students prevent problems, facilitative, that is when the teacher promote in their students do something, and responsive, when the teacher takes to the students to respond a need for language, or remedial, that is when the teacher learns to the student remedies problems. In other side, we have language learning. Learning is a conscious process using the memory to information as spelling rules, conventions of greetings, and vocabulary. In other side, it is considered too as conscious development about how the language is used and the both development skills and strategies which apply best acts of communication. The language learning can be explicit, that is when the learners know when and what they are learning. Implicit, that is when learners don't know when and what they are learning. And declarative, that is when learners know language system. And procedure, that is when learners know how language is used. Principles of second language acquisition relevant to the development of materials for teaching language. When as a teacher we want to use some materials, we have to follow some instructions about second language acquisition. That is very important for um, these materials or for use these materials. The first is materials should achieve impact. That is, the material have to effects and learners as a curiosity, interested, and attention, and through novelty, variety, attractive presentation, appealing content, and achievable challenges. And it's important to know that the impact of the materials can be affected for the needs of the learners, and the teacher has to use the better materials having in count the knowledge of necessities of their learners. Others, the materials should help learners to feel at ease, that is, feel the students comfortable when they are teaching and don't reform in there the feelings as anxious, uncomfortable, or tense. These materials can help or can use it in these ways, for example, writing materials with lots of white space, and using materials with illustrations and materials which are trying to help them, activities to promote the participation, and using the informal voice. The other is the materials should help learners to develop confidence. That is, the materials of activity have to push learners to use their minds in other language levels because when they look that they can do it, they feel confidence inside themselves and they will take their old and new skills at highest level. In order is the material should require and facilitate learner self-investment, that is promoting the learners the feeling and motivation to discover his learning by himself. And in this situation, the teacher can use didactic materials. Um, for example, activities where the teacher include learners in a mini projects or making decisions about which text they can use it. And in other hand, we have to the materials should expose the learners a language in authentic usage. That is, the materials have to give the learners experience with the use of the language in a real life, because um, because the students have to know how we can use it, the language, and what communicative reasons we use it. The other is important that the teacher in these materials you use activities, for example dispositions, following instructions, talk or writing tests, interviewing the teacher, listening radio stories and songs. The other is the materials should provide the learners with opportunities to use the target language to achieve communicative purpose. Is the material have to give opportunity for the learners use their learning language as a communication because this helps them to know their weaks and enforce their knowledge or language acquisition. These materials can use, for example, or can be information activities where the students have to communicate between themselves to complete a test, listening and reading activities uses for discussions, and when the students have to talk, writing activities, or use informal expressions. In other side, the materials have to give um, positive effects in the of instructions are usually delayed in the students. For example, the material have to work in a PPP, that is presentation, practice and production. That is when the teacher first make a presentation or shows the topic, for example, vocabulary, and later he take to the students to participate or practice their vocabulary, and finally the teacher take to the students to make a production, for example writing or talk using this vocabulary. Other the materials should have into account um, the learning styles, for example, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, experiential, analytic, global, depend. Why? Because these improve the acquisition of language in the students. Other, the student have to take into account the silent periods at beginning of instruction. For example, in a grammar classes, the teacher has to use a good material, but this material have to work in an attention and silence of the students. Will they learn the instruction given by the teacher, and this material have to be sure for the practice too. For example, activities like a TPR, starting with a listening compression and respond language questions. Finally, the materials should maximize learning potential in intellectual or emotional, which simulate both right and left brain activities. In this part, it's very important that the teacher use materials to include in these activities which stimulate mental and affective processing. For example, analytic, creative, evaluative, because the student have to use the both brain right and left. Because with this, the student can lead deeper and more durable learning. For example, activities for this material have to be reciting a dialogue, dancing instructions, singing a song, doing a substitution drill, and writing a story. And finally, the materials should not really too much on controlled practice and provide opportunities for outcome feedback. Finally, we can find a lot of information about how design materials in a teaching language. In this reference, you can follow the link and you can find a lot of information about it. As a teacher, we have to remember that not is only use materials in our classes for use it or for uh, give a class or kill a time with our students. No, it's important choose and select materials and having into account the information, the stylist learning, the e-fast, the attitudes, and everything that our students need for be better. And remember that as a teacher, we have to improve the education. Thank you so much.